To True Health Live, your favorite public health podcast. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and audio on your favorite podcast platforms. If you're interested in public health, then this is the space for you. Welcome to Greetings, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to True Health Live. We are live on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, we're there. And we have a special guest with us today. And before I get into our special guest, I did want to just talk about what we are here to discuss. So you may have noticed that our title today is about caring for the aging mind, right? And as I mentioned in our last show, and in the previous shows, this is really about mental health. We've been starting this season about mental health and looking into all facets of it. We've talked about like women, Black women. We've talked about children and specifically racism and how that affects children. We're going to get into men and like all the different areas of it. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Janice Fortman, and she's going to, kind of sit with us today, and we're going to talk about caring for the aging mind and specifically talking about dementia. And even drilling deeper to what her expertise is, which she'll tell us about in a few, is really talking about relationships, right? So that relationship of the adult daughter who's caring for the aging mother who is suffering from dementia. So I do want to like level set before we do the introduction and say, peace and greetings to all of you as you come in to the live, and just give you a brief description of what dementia is, because we kind of hear that term, and we also hear the term Alzheimer's, and sometimes people like kind of use it like back and forth. And so just to give everybody, so we're all starting from the same place. Dementia is actually a broader umbrella term, and Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. And yes, when it comes to Alzheimer's, that is the most popular or the most prevalent kind of dementia, where 60 to 80% of dementia cases is Alzheimer's. But just to give everybody that distinction, because this is True Health Live, and we want to make sure that everybody's learning, and we're all in the same space. The part about dementia and Alzheimer's, they are in the same family, but they are not the same thing, because there's different types of dementia that you can have. So with that being said, I'd like to, have our guest interviewee, Dr. Janice Fortman, introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself and her work and what she does, and what we're here to talk about today.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, Yafe, for having me as a guest on your show. I really appreciate that.
Of
I
course.
I am Dr. Jan Portman, and I am an adult daughter, aging mother relationship expert. And I'm also an international speaker, an award winning author, and a coach, a mother daughter relationship coach. And what I do really is I coach mothers and daughters on how to navigate the challenges in that relationship, which includes, of course, the subject matter for today, which is dementia and Alzheimer's. So, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I also have a TV show myself, and it's called The Relationship Matters TV. And the other one is called The Mother Daughter Relationship Show.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And that's so interesting. You have a TV show. I did see that. And hopefully True Health Live gets to the point where we have a TV show. And Dr. Fortman's information is already in the description box. So if you want to get in touch with her regarding any of the content that we're talking about today, you have questions about dementia, questions about Alzheimer's, further things that you want to know regarding anything that we talk about here today, like please feel free to look for her information and reach out in the chat. So welcome. I see people joining. I'm just going to take a pause for a second, Dr. Portman, and welcome Sean Sullivan. Thank you for joining us. He's on Facebook. We are doing well. Welcome House of Yuya and Beloved Anu. Thank you so much. I'll also, as we get deeper into the show, I'll be sharing the link. So if people have questions that they want to ask live and maybe come out of the chat, we'll, be able to have that space open for you. We do have a question already, but as people have come into the room, I just want to level set again and give everybody a brief summary of what we're discussing today. So, this is True Health Live, and we talk about all things public health and healthcare. And today we're diving into the intricate world of health and wellness, as we have been for the last couple of strongs. We're exploring a topic that touches many people deeply. Caring for aging parents, and specifically, as Dr. Fortman pointed out, the adult daughter and their relationship with the aging mother with dementia. It is a journey filled with challenges, emotional decisions, that are particularly poignant for daughters, often for who find themselves like at the forefront of caregiving. That's a big piece of what this conversation is going to go into. And now I'll move over really quickly to the questions. I have a question, but I don't know where and who I can ask. So for now, Sean, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll get to your question as we move along. So, Dr. Fortman, based on the work that you do when it comes to relationship coaching, and you and I had like a conversation even before this, I wanted to ask a question about kind of like that first, like just dive right into it, that personal impact. So how does the role of being a primary caregiver for an aging parent with dementia typically affect the mental health of the adult who is the caregiver? And if you can, like particularly within the Black community, if that's been your experience.
Okay, sure. As far as the mental health issues of the caregiver is concerned, and usually the caregiver is the adult daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of stress. Um, sometimes it has guilt feelings that affect the mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, stress. It has sometimes anger.
Okay.
Yes, resentment. All of these things happen in that relationship. And the thing is, it's not an uncommon feeling. The guilt usually comes from that feeling of resentment. It can come from that feeling of anger.
Mm-hmm.
It's a journey. It's a very difficult journey. And I'd like to say, as daughters with moms,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it might be a journey that you have to take.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I did have a question because one of the things that we know, especially when it comes to different healthcare issues, we know that people of color, Black and brown people, and particularly Black people in many cases, we actually suffer disproportionately as compared to other racial and ethnic groups. And dementia, and specifically Alzheimer's, is one of them, where, for example, Black people are twice as more likely to be diagnosed as white as their white counterparts. And even in the Latino community, they're about 1.5 times more likely. And we do know also, kind of going to what you talked about, like it does fall on the daughters, that women are actually more likely to be diagnosed. There's more women who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I wondered if you could speak to a little of that, like, as far as it all, falling on the daughters as like the caregiver, does it have something to do, like, in your experience, do you see that it has something to do with, because it is mostly women who are being diagnosed, etc.?
Yes, it does have to do with that. And also, if you think about it, we are more than likely closer to our moms than maybe our brothers.
Mhm.
Only because we usually have a deeper kind of relationship. We are usually the ones who are closer to our moms. You know, if you think about it, as growing up, you're going shopping with your mom. You know, your mom is, just advising you on different things. You really are closer to your mom. But one thing I wanted to say, as far as the medical aspect and as far as getting treatment, what we don't do
Mm.
is recognize the early onset and the early things that really will kind of let us know about dementia and
Yeah.
what's happening.
Mhm.
And when we talk about how Black women are diagnosed more so with Alzheimer's, is really because I would say in the health industry system and within our own culture, we don't go to the doctor. And I'm not saying it's because it's our fault. Sometimes it is. But when you think about medical insurance, when you think about healthcare as far as Black people who really don't have, who sometimes I'd say really don't have access to health care.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that has a lot to do with it as far as the diagnosis of Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Dementia is really the onset of Alzheimer's. So now we might say, oh, she's a little forgetful,
Right.
you know. Oh, he she's gotten older and she doesn't like to socialize as much as she used to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, she's just not as proficient in taking care of her bills. But we don't recognize that that could be an onset of
Onset.
early dementia.
Yeah. And you know what? There are different signs because the other thing is when it comes to dementia and specifically Alzheimer's, we know that it usually the onset is usually later on in life, 65 and up. But some people, although rarer, I should say, some people are diagnosed with early onset or
Mhm.
Alzheimer's or youth onset Alzheimer's, which would be younger than like 60 years old.
Mhm.
But then when we're talking, but for the most part, most people are 65 and up, and the majority of people who have Alzheimer's are like 73, I think, and up. And when it comes to that piece, like the people who have Alzheimer's, we're thinking about an age group, and there's things that naturally occur as we age. There, we do become a little bit more forgetful, we become a little bit more slower and things like that. So, and I have many more questions, but since we touched on this, I want to like kind of dig into it. What are some of I would like for us to like go over some signs and symptoms that people can look for, where they can kind of weigh out, like at least with themselves. And it doesn't mean that you don't see a physician or see someone who can accurately diagnose, but like what are some signs that people can like look and weigh out for between like what might be signs and symptoms of dementia onset, Alzheimer's, as in comparison to typical age related things that happen.
Well, let me tell you a little story.
We love stories here. Go ahead.
Because I went on this journey with my mother,
Okay.
and she had a housekeeper or someone who would come in and clean up for her. And she started telling me how. Well, no, I opened her closet one time. We were getting ready to go shopping, and I
Mm-hmm.
opened up her closet to just get her something. We're gonna pick out something for her to wear.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked in the closet, I saw some bananas. I saw some cookies.
Okay.
And it's like, what? Why do you have this in your closet?
In the closet.
She said, because she's stealing my cookies and my bananas. And then when I looked further, I saw some soap. I
Mm,
saw some face cream. And
mm-hmm.
it's, why is this in here? Well, she's using my face cream and my soap,
Yeah.
stealing my soap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, Yafe, I didn't know anything about dementia, and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. And I'm like, oh, mama, she's
Like,
not.
what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Come
right,
on,
right. No,
really?
she's not doing this. Come on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know. I really didn't know. I'm just thinking, you know, and I just went on about my business. As time went on, I noticed also my mother was very fastidious and keeping a clean house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember having to wash walls in the spring and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she stopped taking showers on a daily basis like she used to. And I said, well, mom, you want to take a shower? No, I don't feel like it. And I thought, oh well, she just doesn't, really want to take showers. I'm not putting it together with this is just a sign of
Mm-hmm.
something that is happening to her in her brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say they're subtle, but they're things or signs that you really don't pay attention to. Well, sometimes I used to call myself on Thursday having dirty Thursdays because on Thursdays, that was the day I wasn't going outside. I was going to stay in the house. I'm not taking a shower,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I'm thinking like that. But as time went on, I kind of ignored it. Oh well, she's in the house all the time. She doesn't want to go out. And I understand. So that's just a couple of what I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Also, not wanting to take her medication.
Okay.
I'm tired of taking these pills. You
Mm-hmm.
know, did you take your pills? Ah, I'll take them later on today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then going the next day and seeing the pills still there. Did you take your pills? Oh, yeah, I took them. Well, no, you didn't. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Just give them to me. I'll take them now.
Okay.
You know, just little things that you might just take for granted or just kind of look over.
Yeah.
As your mom is getting older, pay attention to
Yeah.
any difference in her behavior or thinking.
So when you say pay attention, because then so again, like there are typical things that happen as we're related. So like occasionally forgetting a name or appointment, but then remembering them later is probably okay. But like when it comes to, like in the case of the medication, like, oh, I don't, you had to tell her, you actually had to remind her, or it's like, I don't want to, I don't feel like it. And then also in the case of like the hiding things, and I think we had a comment, we do on the radio, like says that piece Yamina, that is a big one, like a distrust of everyone. And I want like that distrust comes from like a fear because there's a lot of things going on. Like we know, like when it comes to Alzheimer's, it really is a degeneration. I was going to say degradation, but degeneration of our neurons, like literally our brain cells and the nerves that speak between one another in the brain, and all the different lobes, and it usually starts in the frontal lobe, which is why we know that like it's that the cognitive piece, like the organization, like you said, she was really, really clean. So like that organization, the planning, the actual like, that thinking and like putting things in order, like that, and the memory, that's what goes first. So that's what's effective first. And then it just kind of as it's a degenerative disease, it really just kind of takes over everything until, you know, literally there's nothing left.
And you're right about the distrust.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple of clients who would complain to me, and it happened with me myself. The distrust. I put $20 down. Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't put $20 down, and accusing different people
Yeah.
of taking things from them, of
Mm-hmm.
stealing from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
also, yes, that's also a sign, and it's also something that people ignore. Well, she's always saying something like that, or
Mhm.
she's just getting a little paranoid.
Right. Like it's the mood and behavior, because that's another thing, that those are signs and symptoms that are affected. So for like example, like if you're seeing like different like mood swings and like, mood and personality changes, that could be it. But then as you said, like if people are like, "Oh, well, she's always been like that." Like, does that make it harder to diagnose, and harder for example, an adult daughter who's become, or a caregiver, or even a child who has become, an adult child who has become a caregiver, to kind of manage that? And that's where like that anger sets in, because there's not an ability to deal with like the personality changes and the mood disorders. Can you talk a little bit about like how you experienced that?
Well, this is what happened with me. I started really talking more so about what was happening
Mm-hmm.
with my mom, and someone suggested to me, "Do you think she has early dementia?"
Okay.
And I thought, what? I never really thought about that. And what is that? So I just started doing some readings and doing some research, and I saw those signs, as you said, that changing the personality. She was always a very outgoing, lively person, a lot of conversation, love to, do things, love to socialize. And all of that seemed to change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm still thinking, before I really started reading about it and someone told me about dementia, suggested dementia, that I just thought, oh well, she's getting older. She had some physical problems. She was having a difficulty walking, and she just doesn't want to socialize as much.
Okay.
But once I started reading and researching dementia, that's when I thought, this might be what is happening now.
Mhm. Right.
The next thing I did was have a conversation with her doctor.
Okay.
And I told the doctor what I thought was happening. Now, these are for your audience out there whose moms are very intelligent, very crafty. And when the doctor, he wouldn't mention dementia, but he just started asking her questions.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, it was like she said to him one time, "Well, why are you asking me this? Do you think it's something wrong with me?" And and well, he knew, because he knew her, to kind of back off. They can get I, when it got, let's say this, when it got to be where I just knew it was dementia and going into Alzheimer's. When she would get into that doctor's office,
Mm-hmm.
OMG, conversation. You know what I'm saying? Not exhibiting any of those signs. And it was difficult for
Mm.
me to get the doctor to put that in her chart. Because what did he tell me? I don't see any signs.
Right. Because she was, wow. So, okay. So, Wow. So then when we have a comment, and I see your comment, greetings, beloved, I knew, and greetings, Master Many, like, when at what point, because I hear what you're saying, you're like, if you have a parent, specifically a mother who's really crafty, and I don't want to, like, but it sounds like a little bit of manipulation, who's able to like do that. At what point were you able to have that conversation with the doctor so that he could put that in her chart, kind of give the diagnosis, I should say, diagnose her like officially?
Never did. Never did. Because even though I would say things that were happening,
Uh-huh.
things that I saw, the doctor is not going to put it in that chart unless the doctor sees evidence. And he told me this. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see when we had our conversation, he told me this. He said, because people will say, oh, my mom or my daughter, I mean, my mom or my father has
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's, and they're doing it for a negative kind of reasoning, right?
Yeah.
And so if the doctor does not see the evidence, he never saw the evidence. Never. She was always on point. And I think it was because, and I've seen this before, they know that within themselves that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're fighting it. And when they feel that, you know, especially in a medical situation, that I might exhibit this, they control the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do have like another question about that. Like I would, it would be interesting to know. So then, being that this was your situation, and then the doctor was not able to officially diagnose her, like how do you use that to then coach your clients through their relationships with their mothers, like who have been diagnosed? But put a pin in it. We're gonna put a pin in it, and I'm gonna go really quick to the questions. Beloved Anu says, that's true. I experienced this with my father. In the earliest stages, many family members would brush off his behavior. Okay, this is when we're talking about the behavior and mood swings. It wasn't until he wasn't paying bills that we started to see that something was wrong, considering he had money to pay bills. There were so many strange behaviors before I was able to start getting help for him. It was like nothing was wrong. Exactly. And she said, my father did the same exact thing. My father had me looking like I needed to be seeing the doctor. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So that being said, thank you for sharing that, beloved. How does that translate, for you? Do you have clients who have a similar situation to you, where the parent is like, I'm fighting, I'm afraid, I'm fighting, I don't want that diagnosis? And like, especially like us brown people, we do like, we don't like a diagnosis a lot of the time. So it's like, I dealt with something similar. My mother did not have Alzheimer's, but like not wanting to accept, this is what you have, because of whatever choices you made. So this is what it is, but not wanting to accept that diagnosis. And I've seen it happen in many, relatives, like not wanting to move a certain way because I don't want to hear the doctor say this, So if you don't say it, then it doesn't exist and it's not happening, and I can magically make it disappear. That's kind of like what I'm hearing. So like, what does that look like with some of your clients, with obviously without, disclosing any personal information, and how are you able to kind of walk them through those situations?
Well, I do have clients that are going through that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I give them some techniques, some tools, and some tips. This one particular client, their mom is not paying the bills.
Okay.
The mom lost the telephone, and well, that's different. I'll go to that. But so what I told them, I said, okay, um, do you have power of attorney over your mom's, do you have power of attorney? Well, no, they're sisters and they don't. So I said, okay, well, when you go visit her, do you ever see bills? Like, yes, we see bills lying around. I said, take your phone, take a picture. So that way you have the account numbers. So if anything happens, at
Mm-hmm.
least you can track her bills in a sense.
Okay.
So that's you. So if you see this bill and it's overdue,
Mm-hmm.
now what you can do is say to your mom, "Oh, um, your bill. This bill is overdue." Now in this instance, the mom said, "Oh no, no, no." And then I told the daughter, "But tell a story about my bills were overdue one time and I didn't even know it." In other words, what I told him is it you have to be smarter than your mom.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, when you see things are awry, you have to decide, what can I do to help this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I did an article on, it's called the reluctant care giving. In a lot of instances, moms, uh, uh, fathers, they're reluctant and they know they need it. They need someone to help them with their bills,
Mm-hmm.
but they're reluctant. And so there's certain things, tips, and tools that you have to do to make them feel that they are still in control, because they don't want, that's where the anger comes in
Right.
also, is that fear, that losing control. So all of these things you have to really take into consideration. You have to keep into your head, into your heart. And whatever is going on, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
When you're talking about changes in personalities,
Mm-hmm.
being angry, um, um, accusing you of stealing, any of that, don't take it personally. It is the disease.
Yeah. Right. Thank you for saying that. Like it's disease. Like
And
so.
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. It literally is killing off your brain cells. We have like some really good questions in the comments. I just want to go through them. So, and I forgot to do this before with beloved's comments, but I will do this now. So, House of Yuya says, I can relate. My father is currently having challenges with his memory. He recently went to the doctor to get an MRI, right? Like, part of that diagnosis is not just observing the behavior, but actually getting a scan to so that they can see what's happening. Different scans will, like, depending on what scan is ordered, it will light up the different areas of the brain, whether it's the nerves, the lobe, like whatever they need to see, so they can see if there is some degeneration with the nerve cells in the neurons in the brain.
Yeah. Or
um
also, I have a client where not only is it dementia, but the mom had several small strokes.
oh, right.
Now, now, when they showed the mom the MRI or the X-ray,
Mm-hmm.
the mom commented that it looks like popcorn. But then later on, when the daughter was saying, "Well, mom, you had a stroke," the mother said, "Oh no, I didn't."
Oh, wow.
And
Oh,
then later on in the conversation, she said, "Well, I did see all that little popcorn, but doesn't mean I have a stroke. I have a stroke."
hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's part of that. Is that was
that
that
denial.
result of like the memory loss, or the I'm not going to accept this diagnosis.
Exactly. Yes.
So, beloved Anu says, I was about to ask if she could share. So, she wants to know if you can share about the legal process. So this is like as a response to like the bills, like talking about how to get them to pay the bills. She says, I learned a lot having to go through the process of getting power of attorney to power of healthcare to legal guardianship. And she says, there's no book, no guidebook for when these instances come. So, can you share a little about that and how people can do that?
There are a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with AARP, she can look up resources on AARP and just Google. Google knows everything. I say,
Mm-hmm.
and just Google, and you can find that. But yes, in her case, fortunately, she was able to get the power of attorney over finances and healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really depends on where you are. I have clients that cannot get that because their mom or their father refuses.
Okay.
Okay.
And is that, does that refusal kind of, is it acknowledged if there is no official diagnosis?
Correct.
Okay. So if there's an
Correct.
official diagnosis, then they're able to do that. Can you share?
Yes.
So were there steps that she took, or even that? Well, no, yours was, it wasn't an official diagnosis, but what were the steps that some of your clients took to do that? From calling the lawyer, like what actual paperwork, that they have to fill out, et cetera, or what resource did they go to aside from AARP, like that could be helpful.
Well, you have to have the medical doctor to say that the mom or the father has Alzheimer's. If there is no medical diagnosis, it's just your word against whose word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so evidently, she must have had that medical diagnosis, and then, and then that's when I suggest that you go to a lawyer to make sure that you fill out the proper forms. Um, you know, uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And we have, and I'm gonna get to the other questions, but when we're talking about like the legal piece and getting a lawyer and like bringing in outside people, this is where we get into the territory of how it becomes like it can become an emotional drain for the caretaker. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about like that resentment and anger, if that part, like that emotional part, because of finances, because lawyers are not free. Maybe you have a family member who's a lawyer, and you find somebody who'll do something pro bono, or gratis or free or in kind, which is amazing. But by and large, people don't necessarily do things for free. And so then there becomes the financial burden, whether it becomes because things are in arrears, or past due, because bills are not being paid, or because now you're going through these different processes of trying to get doctor's appointments straightened out, and going here and there, getting diagnoses, wondering if insurance will cover anything, whatever legal processes you have to go through. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how that finance piece can put a strain on, because we know, just off the rip, finances, money in general, like is the top reason why people are stressed today. It's filtered through the top five. Like the top five is money, work related stress. Those are related, because if you're having stress at work, it affects your pockets. Depending on what it is. Family, personal health problems, and just like looking at what's happening in the economy today. Like those are the top reasons that people are stressed out. And we know that, like, if you're in this constant state of stress, that can affect you physically, because you're always in this fight or flight mode, and it starts to take a toll on our own bodies physically. So talk a little bit about how that part like kind of fed into your experience or those of your clients.
Well, I can talk about more so about those of my clients because my mom did have a good health insurance, and, and there was a lawyer in the family.
Okay. So
Right,
you're the outlier.
right. But you can download power of attorney forms.
Mm-hmm.
However, your mom or your father still has to sign it. If it's a financial power of attorney,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to, your mom and you have to go to the bank because you have to have it witnessed.
I know that.
So, you know, so you might can get around having a lawyer as far as, your power of attorney. But
Mm-hmm.
it has, financially, you're going to have to go to the bank.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the cost, the finances, as far as that's concerned, that's easy. And that's like there was no diagnosis, but the mom or the father has consented
Okay.
to do that.
Okay. And you've noticed that you've had your clients experience that consent.
Yeah, they consented to do that.
Okay.
The same with medical. If the parent consents, then you don't need a lawyer. You don't need the doctor to say, yes, uh, that parent has Alzheimer's. You don't need that. As long as they consent and they sign the form and it's witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um.
The difficulty is when, as I said with one of my clients, the daughter has medical power of attorney,
Right, which is different from the
but
finance.
she doesn't have financial.
Mm-hmm.
The mom refused.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So how do you kind of move her through that situation?
She has to accept it. And as I said to her, like I said earlier, if you can um, take pictures of her bills, if you can weave stories around her bills. Um, she said that, and this happened with me also. When you get these calls from the telemarketers and they prey on senior citizens, and I I happened to be at my mom's house when she got ready to give them her social security number.
Yeah.
What?
Hmm. And that's
No.
a thing that these
Okay. But so what I told my client was that have a story. Talk about yourself. You know, this marketer called me and blah, 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 blah. And I never give out my telephone number. I
yeah,
have a friend that lost $5,000 because put plant a seed.
yeah,
In other words, you got to be smarter than.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just brought up something really important. I was having a conversation with someone recently about like the whole scamming culture and how they prey like they're calling everybody, and we know like they got, from what I understand, like a lot of these places, they're international, they're not even in these borders, and many of them, because they either bought or still had the phone lists of the different American companies they were working with, like whether it been banks or credit card companies and what have you. And so like the contact information and things like that were kind of still left. And so they're able to get a hold of different phone numbers and basically bug everyone, to oblivion. And a lot of the times, like people who get scammed, are elderly people because they sound believable. And it's unfortunate because we have about, I think the number now is 6.9 million people in America, in this country, at least in the United States, are have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So when you couple that with people who are calling to get information for like less than reputable reasons, like it really presents a problem because these people are like conning and scamming people out of like life savings. So
Yeah.
especially really dangerous when it comes to elderly members of, any of our communities who don't necessarily have the cognitive ability to say, wait, this might not be a good thing, you know. Um, we have a question, and no, Master Menu, like the question was not asked already. And he says, are there genetic predispositions to this order? That is a really good question. So I did, like, I have my own like reading that I'll do, but that's for you, Dr. Fortman. Like, are there genetic predispositions for dementia and Alzheimer's?
From what now, I'm not a medical doctor, but from what I understand, yes. In some cases, yes. But I don't know, like I said, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know why, genetics plays a role in everything really,
Yeah.
as we're concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. For right now, like the research is showing, like they have not necessarily been able to pinpoint exactly why people
Right.
get Alzheimer's. However, there are a myriad of different risk factors, and genetics and heredity do play a part in it. If you have a family history, obviously age will be the first one, because we know, like, most people who are diagnosed are 65 and up. It does not mean that there are not some people who unfortunately are diagnosed with early onset or use-based Alzheimer's or dementia. And just really quickly to kind of reset the room again. We're talking about aging parents, or aging, caring for aging minds, and specifically we use the word dementia, but I want to be, very, very careful that dementia and Alzheimer's are related. They are not synonymous, but they are related. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. There are different types of dementia that one could get, but Alzheimer's is basically the number one diagnosis that people get in that spectrum of different types of dementia. And age, genetics, family history are definitely a part of them, and there's other factors. And much like, many of the other diseases that we suffer from, lack of and you, even the CDC has noted this, as well as the Alzheimer's Association, lack of activities. So, like, not
Yes.
enough physical activity is one of them. Not enough mental exercising. So, like, so those brain games, like, you like
Yeah.
word puzzles and stuff, like things that exercise
Yes.
your brain, like, and you don't do them. It doesn't have to exactly be word puzzle, but something to exercise your brain. It could be reading. Back in the day, like, people used to read the newspaper like every day, and now it's just like the quick swipe, swipe, swipe. So, like, there's, people don't read enough anymore, and people have attention spans. Back in 2017, it was like the attention span of a goldfish. Now it's less than that. So, like,
Right.
people are not necessarily exercising their mental, those brains, as much as they used to, back in the days, as they used to say. Another thing is, obviously, as we always talk about on this show, is definitely related to some of the foods that we eat. Drinking
Yes.
alcohol, smoking and drinking, obviously. And I will say, though, there is also an alcohol related dementia, it's alcohol related brain injury, which does fall under the diabetes, a type, not diabetes, a type of dementia, which brings me to the next one, diabetes. Diabetes and obesity are also considered risk factors. Nowadays, we've seen that Alzheimer's is connected to too much sugar on the brain, basically, and over too much sugar in the blood, diabetes, too much sugar on the brain, Alzheimer's. So it's even being called type 3 diabetes, and which researchers are using as synonymous with Alzheimer's. And high cholesterol, high blood pressure, you name it. So a lot of the things that plague us in other areas of the body, they're also on the brain. Our bodies use sugar. That's the first source of fuel, is sugar. And and anything in too much or too little of anything, it messes up the balance, of our bodies. And so to answer your question, like, yes, that's one of them. Like, again, they have not pinpointed it, but that is definitely a risk factor.
And learn something new. There's so much to learn. Learn to play an instrument. Learn, right now I'm learning AI. And just for your viewers, and I don't think you know this either, I am 82 years old.
I did not know
I
that.
know you did.
What? You know, I did know something because I was like, let me do my research. I did know that someone was a Miss Senior in
Miss
uh,
Senior Illinois, America,
Illinois, right? I
at
was
the
like,
age of 80.
I did not know that.
Wait a minute, honey.
I'm going to give you
Alzheimer's, dementia, and
70.
Alzheimer's? Oh, no.
Oh wow. Yeah,
I'm
I
doing
like that.
everything,
I like
eating
that.
right, exercising, learning new things, frame of
Yeah.
mind, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All
I
of that.
like that. Learn something new, like play an instrument. We do have someone in our chat now, like she's learning Hebrew. You know, learning something new, keep
Oh,
your brain active. Is well, we all are, but you know,
yes.
talking about people who are like of the older age and in that kind of risk, that age risk factor age. Anu Radio says that's so important. Don't take it personally. My grandmother aims for the jugular. I'm so sorry on the radio.
Don't take it personally.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not her. It's not her.
What else? And you know, and honestly, like there are, and this could be a whole other show. We can definitely kind of revisit this topic and talk about like the spiritual component of this. Like, you know, what happens, what is going on in that part of a person that where it has now kind of manifested physically and in the real world as dementia or Alzheimer's. And you know, that's a whole other show which we can get into if folks like it. You know, make sure you can definitely write into truehealthlive@gmail.com and let us know. Safta Ahava says, my mother went through that. We helped and kept her involved so she didn't feel like she was losing control of her independence. Okay. Okay. So that's kind of like, you know, an example of that would be like how you said, like, you know, build a story around something, you know, it's just like, oh, you know, I forget to pay my bills sometimes too. Or, you know, so it doesn't feel like it's so like, okay, I'm the parent now and you do what I say, because that also can have you know, not the best impact. I remember like as my mom was aging, like she really didn't like the she didn't like to kind of grapple with the idea that the children had to become the adults.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't actually be have to be that way either. But we know that sometimes these things happen. Um, Dr. Hava also says my mother's doctor was able to sign a letter concerning my mother's condition, which my sister took to an attorney. Thank you for that. And please
Yes.
elaborate more if you care to share. I did put the link in the chat and I can pin it. The link is definitely in the chat and I can put it in the chat again if you would like to come on and share, you know, some of that to like give a little bit more as to like what that legal journey was like. I think that would be really helpful for people. Beloved Anu says, the tricky thing is that this is so shaky. The tricky thing is that they would have to sign those power of attorney papers before the doctor provides the diagnosis. Why is that? But so in your experience, and I'll just ask beloved Anu to elaborate. In your experience, were you not able to get like so for like what Dr. Hava said, the doctor to sign off on like been he or she has been officially diagnosed. Um,
I can understand what she's saying in that if sometimes if they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, did they know that what they were signing? Yeah. So I can understand why she said that. You are muted. Can you hear me? You can't hear me either. Can you hear me now? No. Okay. So if you, okay, they can hear you. Oh, I'm reading. Okay, this so they can hear me. Yes, I can answer some questions. So if you can put the questions in the chat. I just see in my mother's case, she was already unable to make sound decisions, which the doctor also verified, which is good because it is very important to work hand in hand with the medical doctors. I think Yafe, you're back.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. I was trying to bring somebody on backstage, and then it just kind of, I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask our person backstage to like log off and try coming in again.